What if I told you that the position of your eyelids is actually a mechanical remote control for your brain waves?
I mean, it sounds a bit like science fiction,
Right.
right? But it is incredibly accurate.
Yeah, exactly. Because we spend years trying to quiet our minds, agonizing over mantras and all these breathing techniques.
Yeah.
But we just completely ignore the physical steering wheel sitting right on our faces.
We really do. We treat meditation like it's purely a mental exercise.
Right. So welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to uncover how literally a millimeter of movement in your eyelids can completely alter your cognitive environment.
And the source material we're using today is just fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. We are pulling our insights from Osman, who is widely known as the blind Muslim yogi. He's this energy healer, an entrepreneur, and a meditation teacher with a staggering 44 years of experience.
Yeah, he's been teaching since 1981. And the scope of his experience is really what makes this so compelling. He has reached thousands of students across more than 100 different countries.
Which is just a massive sample size.
Exactly. When you apply a practice across that kind of global, decades-long sample size, you kind of strip away all the cultural noise.
Right, you stop looking at the regional traditions.
Yeah, and you start seeing the raw patterns of human neurobiology. We are looking at the pure mechanical reality of how the human brain responds to physical stimuli.
And so we're going to break down the three primary meditation eye positions he discusses, which are open, closed, and half closed.
Because the goal here is to help you, listening right now, bypass all that frustration of a wandering mind.
Yeah, finding the precise mechanical technique that actually works for your own neurology. Because trying to clear your mind without knowing where to direct your physical gaze, it's sort of like trying to steer a car with your eyes just darting all over the dashboard.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with a method that sounds completely counterintuitive for anyone trying to unwind, which is sitting there with your eyes wide open.
Yeah, it definitely challenges the very archetype of meditation most of us hold. I mean, if someone tells you to find inner peace, your immediate reflex is to shut out the world.
Right, not stare it down.
Exactly. But Osman points to the open eye method as a highly effective, legitimate approach. He specifically learned this from the Brahma Kumari.
And they're this massive international spiritual organization,
Right.
right? Like with centers in almost every major city globally.
They are, yeah. And Osman notes that their approach is incredibly accessible because it embraces all religions. You don't have to compromise your own theological values or, adopt a completely new belief system just to learn their physical tools.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
And for Osman, adopting their open eye method was actually a massive turning point. He says it triggered a major leap forward in his early practice.
But to understand why this works, we really have to look at what they're actually doing. It isn't just sitting wide-eyed in some chaotic room.
No, not at all. They practice a highly pragmatic, science-based approach where you focus your gaze on a specific fixed point, like often a soft light or a symbol.
What's fascinating here is that keeping the eyes open and fixed on a single point roots the practitioner firmly in present reality. It is a brilliant way to hack the visual cortex.
How so?
Well, think about the sheer processing power that vision requires. Your visual cortex consumes a massive amount of the brain's overall energy. So when your eyes are open and locked onto a physical object, you are forcing the brain to process real-time external data.
Oh, I get it. You're giving the brain a very simple physical anchor to hold on to.
Exactly. And it physically prevents the brain from booting up the default mode network.
Right, the system responsible for like daydreaming and ruminating.
Yeah, stressing about the future, all of that, because daydreaming requires you to tune out your visual surroundings so your brain can project internal images.
So by forcing your visual cortex to stay engaged with the physical room, you are basically structurally blocking the brain's ability to escape into fantasy.
It is a very grounded, reality-based approach to focus.
Okay, so the theory makes perfect sense. You occupy the brain's processing power with a blank wall or candle, so it literally doesn't have the bandwidth to worry about your taxes.
Right.
But wait, I have to push back here on a purely anatomical level. If you sit and stare at a wall for 20 minutes or an hour, doesn't that physically hurt? Like your corneas are going to dry out.
Yeah, you have identified the exact structural limitation of the open eye method right there. And Osman confirms this through his own extensive experience.
I mean, I would think your eyeballs would just start to burn.
They do. The pragmatic benefits of grounding your mind are eventually entirely overshadowed by the physical strain on your eyes. The eyeballs start to burn, absolutely.
And when your eyeballs are burning, your body initiates an autonomous survival reflex.
Yeah.
Right? You had to blink.
Yeah, and your eyes start watering.
Exactly.
Uh,
And if you are trying to cultivate this delicate, unbroken state of deep concentration, a sudden, forced physical reflex like a harsh blink, it just shatters the entire environment.
It really does. It's like dropping a plate in a silent room. The physical toll eventually just overrides the mental benefits.
Did Osman stick with it, though?
Actually, no. He stopped using the open eye technique as his primary method for this very reason. It simply demands way too much physical endurance from the ocular system.
Which makes sense, because if the visual cortex is completely overloaded and the physical eyes are burning from staring at the wall, the brain's natural defense mechanism is to pivot to the exact opposite extreme.
Right, you just shut the blast doors entirely.
You close your eyes.
Which leads us into traditional mindfulness meditation. This is the closed eye method, typically paired with observing the sensation of your own breath.
Right, and Osman highlights this as an incredibly popular choice.
Yeah.
And for good reason, right? It's basically the scientific darling of the modern wellness industry.
Oh, absolutely. There are literal mountains of empirical data behind this, lowering blood pressure, reducing cortisol levels, improving emotional regulation.
And Osman readily recommends it because he has seen his own students achieve massive, positive holistic results using this closed-eye breathwork method.
Yeah, it is considered the safest, most reliable entry point for a beginner because it removes the physical strain of the open eye method completely.
Right, you just close your eyes, you tune into the rise and fall of your chest, and you remove all external sensory threats.
And that signals the nervous system that you are in a safe environment, which is exactly why the blood pressure drops.
So on paper, closing your eyes seems like the ultimate solution, like turning off a computer monitor to save energy. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Shutting your eyes entirely introduces a whole new set of psychological hazards that nobody warns you about when you download a meditation app.
Hazards that Osman found deeply problematic for his own daily practice, actually, because the first risk of closed-eye meditation is the most obvious physiological one, the sleep risk.
Oh, I know this one too well. It is so easy to just accidentally take a nap.
It really is. I mean, if you are a normal, exhausted person trying to meditate after a long day at the office, you sit down, you close your eyes, your breathing slows down.
And your brain immediately misinterprets the assignment and thinks, oh, excellent, we're going to sleep now.
Exactly. Our conditioning is just incredibly powerful. The combination of closed eyes and a dropping heart rate triggers the parasympathetic nervous system to initiate sleep protocols.
Which is great for sleep, but terrible for meditation.
Right. But Osman points out a second hazard that is far more disruptive for someone trying to actively meditate. He calls it entering the imagination world.
Because nature abhors a vacuum. If you shut down the visual monitor, you are depriving the brain of external data. And, well, the human brain hates being bored.
It really does. So it just starts generating its own visual data. The internal environment becomes fueled 100% by your imagination.
Right. Without the anchor, the physical room, the mind begins to wander wildly.
This is where you see the default mode network kick into overdrive again. Osman notes that one of the core goals of meditation is bringing the mind to a gentle one-pointedness.
Let's translate that for a second. One-pointedness is basically getting your brain to stop frantically flipping through 100 different TV channels and just rest peacefully on one single station.
Exactly. Achieving that focused stillness without using aggressive mental force, but finding that gentle one-pointedness becomes almost impossible when your brain is running a full-scale movie theater in your head.
The imagination plays tricks on you.
It absolutely does.
I can validate this 100%. I will sit down, close my eyes, focus on my breath, and within like 3 minutes, I am mentally relitigating an argument I had in 2018. Or I am meticulously planning out my grocery list for the week.
You get completely swept away by the narrative.
Yes, and Osman personally found this closed-eye method way too abstract. There's no physical anchor to hold on to, so you just sort of drift out to sea.
Which is why this raises an important question. How do we achieve the deep internal focus of closed eyes without falling into the trap of the mind-wandering imagination world?
Right, and simultaneously, how do we get the physical grounding of the open eye method without the painful burning and the blinking?
We need to find the mechanical compromise.
Yeah, if wide open is physically too harsh and tightly shut is psychologically too dreamy, we have to find a middle path. And that brings us to the third technique, which is Osman's ultimate go-to method, the half-closed eye.
This is the Goldilocks zone. It beautifully solves both the physiological strain and the psychological hazards we just explored, but the specific physical setup here is crucial.
Yeah, let's detail the exact mechanics because Osman is very specific about this. He says the eyelids should be dropped so they are about 80% closed.
And that 80% metric is doing two distinct jobs. First, it acts as a physical shield. By dropping the eyelid most of the way down, you are protecting the eyeball from moving air, wind, and harsh light. It entirely prevents that drying and burning sensation of the open eye method.
It eliminates the need to blink frantically, so your physical comfort is totally secured.
Exactly.
But where are you actually looking with that remaining 20% of your vision? Because Osman instructs the practitioner to focus toward the tip of the nose. Now, when I first read that, my immediate reaction was, wait, staring at the tip of my nose, doesn't that just make you cross-eyed?
Yeah, it sounds like it would.
I feel like crossing your eyes for 20 minutes would give you a massive tension headache.
It absolutely would, and it is a very common trap for beginners. But Osman clarifies a crucial distinction here to prevent exactly that. The instruction to look at the tip of the nose is figurative.
Oh, okay, so it's a directional goal, not a literal focal point.
Exactly. You aren't actually trying to study the pores on your own nostril.
Thank goodness.
Not at all. You are not physically straining your extraocular muscles to cross inward. What you are doing is simply dropping your gaze downward.
Like looking at the floor.
Yeah, you are looking at a spot maybe 1 foot away on the floor, or even closer, just in the general downward direction of the nose. He emphasizes that there should be absolutely no strain on the eye muscles. It is a soft, passive downward angle.
Okay, let me make sure I have the exact posture down. You have the 80% eyelid shield preventing the burn.
Right.
You have the soft downward gaze preventing the muscular strain. I mean, it sounds like a great recipe for a nap, but the payoff Osman gets from this specific mechanical posture is profound.
It really is.
He says that after getting used to this, it feels immensely peaceful. But the wildest part to me is the speed. He says he can drop into a theta state almost instantly.
Yeah, he describes taking only a split second to 2 seconds to feel completely enveloped in that theta state.
Wait, okay, for those of us who don't have an EEG machine handy, what exactly does being in a theta state feel like? Is that like the moment right before you fall asleep?
That is a great comparison, actually, because brainwaves operate at different frequencies, right? When
Yeah.
we are actively engaged in conversation, like right now, we are in high-frequency beta waves.
Sure.
When we relax, we drop into alpha. Delta is deep, dreamless sleep. Theta sits right on the border between awake and asleep.
Ah, I see.
It is a low-frequency state associated with deep intuition, profound relaxation, and a real sense of internal flow. Getting there usually takes practitioners a long time to achieve in a single session.
But Osman is hitting it in 1 to 2 seconds, like literally flipping a light switch.
Yes.
And he explicitly notes that he cannot reach this state if his eyes are fully open or if his eyes are fully closed. It is entirely dependent on this specific half-closed physical position. It just doesn't work for him any other way.
If we connect this to the bigger picture and look at the underlying physiological mechanics, we can understand why this works so rapidly.
Okay, lay it on me.
When you perform this gentle, straight stretch of the eyeball muscles looking downward without straining, it actually creates a physical pulling sensation.
Yeah, he describes it as a pulling sensation in the third eye region.
Right. Now, let's bridge the gap between the traditional terminology and the biology. In meditation sciences, the third eye region, the space slightly above and between the eyebrows, is considered a principal energy point that controls other energy centers.
Okay, but neurologically, what is happening?
Well, what happens when you tilt your eyes downward? The extraocular muscles are connected to cranial nerves, including the trigeminal nerve. Stretching them in a specific, sustained downward posture sends biofeedback directly to the brain.
So you're basically sending a mechanical signal to the nervous system.
Exactly. You are mechanically stimulating a pathway that increases vagal tone, and the vagus nerve is the superhighway of the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system.
Oh, wow.
By physically positioning your eyes in this downward angle, you aren't just hoping your brain will calm down. You are using a specific muscular posture to forcibly trigger a physiological relaxation response.
That is wild.
It acts as an incredibly effective starting point to activate focus safely and powerfully.
So what does this all mean? It means the physical mechanics of a simple eye tilt can bypass the psychological warfare of meditation.
Yes, beautifully said.
Instead of sitting there fighting your imagination or, struggling to keep your eyes from watering, you can just put blinders on a racehorse. You let in just enough light so the brain knows it is awake, but you cut off the peripheral distractions so the imagination cannot run wild.
You tilt your gaze and directly trigger a physiological shift into deep relaxation. It is a brilliant mechanical shortcut.
It really is. It gives you enough visual input to keep you out of the imagination world, but enough physical protection to keep your eyes from burning.
Exactly.
Well, we have covered a massive amount of ground here today. We started with the Brahma Kumari method, that highly pragmatic, open-eye approach that anchors your visual cortex to reality, but eventually taxes your physical eyes.
Right.
Then we explored the scientific darling, the closed-eye mindfulness approach, which lowers your blood pressure but leaves you totally vulnerable to falling asleep or getting lost in the chaotic grocery list wandering of your own mind.
And finally, we landed on Osman's preferred technique, the highly efficient, physically balanced, half-closed method that mechanically pulls you into a theta state. And with 44 years of experience teaching across 100 countries, Osman's biggest lesson for you, listening right now, is that you have choices.
Yeah, you really do.
You do not have to fight your own neurobiology. If you are someone who feels safest observing your breath with your eyes completely closed and it yields massive positive results without you falling asleep, keep doing it.
Absolutely. Do what works.
But if you find yourself constantly daydreaming, replaying arguments, or nodding off, you don't have to sit there and be frustrated. You can pivot. You can try adjusting the mechanics.
Drop the eyelids to 80%.
Soften the gaze downward toward the nose and see if you can trigger that physical shift. The mechanics of meditation are adaptable to what your specific mind needs on any given day.
You don't have to force a square peg into a round hole just because someone told you meditation has to look a certain way.
Exactly.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thread to pull on, something to just mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
Okay.
We just spent this entire time unpacking how Osman achieves this profound, encompassing theta state in just 1 to 2 seconds, purely through a slight, highly specific shift in the physical angle of his eyes.
A seemingly insignificant micro adjustment of the muscles.
Right. If such a tiny physical adjustment can instantly alter our brainwaves, shift our consciousness, and signal our nervous system to completely relax, what other minor physical habits are secretly shaping our mental states every single day without us even noticing?
Oh, that is a great question.
Think about the physical architecture of your daily life. Think about the angle of your neck when you stare down at your phone for 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
The dreaded tech neck.
Yeah, or how you hold tension in your jaw when you're driving in traffic.
Or how you collapse your chest when you sit at your desk.
Yeah.
Those micro postures are constantly sending biofeedback to your brain.
They absolutely are.
Are those tiny physical angles secretly pulling you into states of chronic anxiety or lethargy, just as quickly as Osman's eye tilt pulls them into peace? Are you actually in control of your mental state, or is your posture steering you? Pay attention to the physical levers you are pulling today.